When it comes to gaming, I've always liked to stay official. And by that I mean one of the big three, because up until about 3 years ago, when I bought my first refurbished PC, I didn't even think Windows was all too appealing. 3 years have passed and I've changed a lot. I don't stray far from big name launchers like Steam, Epic and Rockstar, but I know my way around Windows 10. However, it has been 3 years, and even at the start of those 3 years, it could barely run Minecraft. So what better way to upgrade than to try out a SteamDeck? As a replacement. A permanent replacement. So, with quite a lot to lose, I put everything I valued on a USB stick and sold my PC. As you may be able to tell, this review style video is not really aimed at the most technical people, but also not the least. The main reason I wanted to get the SteamDeck was because of its specs and cheap price relative to other PCs of similar power. Not confirmed by Valve directly, it's assumed that the SteamDeck is sold at a loss, meaning the price will be much more competitive because competing PC brands can't, as far as I know, make money from software. My PC has basically been an indie exclusive machine, and the only console I had was a Switch, which, though fantastic, could not run practically all of the latest games. My most anticipated games on the deck were recent ones like Baldur's Gate 3 and FF7 Remake, but also older ones I'd missed like No Man's Sky and Red Dead 2. It goes without saying that I'd only recommend the SteamDeck as a replacement if it's an upgrade in terms of specs from your current PC. My setup simply consisted of a dock, monitor and a keyboard and mouse, but when the SteamDeck arrived, I had no games to play in my library to properly test it out, because why would I? My first impression was incredibly negative. Splitgate, a game I'd played before and probably my most intensive game graphically, running in desktop mode. The OS looked as I had planned and hoped, but I wanted to use the device in majority like this because it just felt more PC-like. Though in desktop mode, I booted the game into a controller-exclusive experience. My disappointment was immeasurable. My mouse and keyboard had no gameplay input despite their responsiveness to the interface. When I connected it to the monitor, the screens did not scale properly, and even when fixing, the same issues arose every time I booted it up. The file manager seemed convoluted, and to top it all off, the icons would reset their positions on the desktop, meaning it would be impossible to have a nice layout. I thought I'd made a massive mistake. Fast forward to the next day, I bought Baldur's Gate 3 and tested out a few features while I wait for it to download. The customization and support from the community is immense. In fact, most of what I did was through guides and recommendations. My first step was a browser. This was the first thing that just worked, and it felt great. It also felt like the first thing that was familiar, because it was a browser I'd used for years and synced my bookmarks and passwords. Because of my plans for the device, I had minimal use for the game mode, which the system booted into every time, which meant that the boot up process took a little longer, about 30 seconds longer, which isn't too bad. I also tested out some plugins, which worked well despite being within a very laggy menu. One thing I will have for those considering buying SteamDeck is that things will constantly start and stop working. What I mean by this is that things that worked just 2 weeks ago, such as this popular plugin, will simply stop compatibility after just the most minor updates. For more niche things, in my instance getting keyboard and mouse support to work on Splitgate, there will likely be nobody to contact, as even Reddit was confused about my issue. Tutorials will be slightly less and less likely to work with their increasing age, and I found myself just flat out ignoring videos from 2 years ago. In this aspect, I recommend the SteamDeck for exclusive PC use to only those with at least a medium understanding of navigating system files and editing small amounts of code. I assumed Baldur's Gate would be the first game to work immediately, as Steam ranks each game's compatibility with the Steam Deck, and it was ranked among the top tier. I was wrong. In fact, despite my monitor's size and resolution, the game opened with massively stretched resolutions as if simply enlarging the would-be output of the Steam Deck itself. Not only this, but like Splitgate, it requested controller-exclusive inputs, and even worse, unlike Splitgate, it did not allow me to navigate menus with my mouse. I was stuck on the loading screen of the game that practically justified my purchase. At this point, I kinda gave up. I thought and still do think that most games on the device will not work immediately and require a sense of tinkering with. I just took it out of the dock and played how it was intended, handheld. Though this worked perfectly, I felt bitter and couldn't help but be annoyed. I was still and yet to find a game which worked on my monitor. This might sound stupid, but without tutorials I accomplished more, because rather than following instructions directly and finding that things didn't work, I freely tried things myself that I thought could work. This is where everything clicked. The most embarrassing solution I immediately found was the fix for Splitgate. It was literally just a toggle in settings, but I hadn't found it because tutorials I looked up had elaborate measures and dug deep into the code. Baldur's Gate 3 settings could be altered in the controller section of its properties file on Steam, something I could have found earlier if I just looked around a little more. From here, the resolution could be changed in the game as I could navigate through the menus with my mouse. Although I didn't change anything, the desktop mode simply started to load in the correct resolution, and I found that icons could be locked and they would retain their positions. Basic apps like Spotify, Discord and other games launchers literally had their own local files or alternatives in the store, which meant that they wouldn't need some elaborate scheme to download them. Because it's not like Nintendo, which only wants you to play Nintendo games. Steam literally wants you just to have the best experience. Once this rather large hurdle of the first week was over and I knew what to expect, I started to feel comfortable. In fact, I preferred it to my original PC. I started to realize that I enjoyed the tinkering of every little app I downloaded, as it allowed an immense scale of customization. In addition, practically every non-game app in the store was completely free, and in fact I even found free games in the store which were paid everywhere else. Though I completely planned on keeping the deck docked at all times, just the option of essentially taking my PC with me everywhere is awesome. Not to mention the weird but for some reason enjoyable faces you get when you tell other people that your PC is what looks to them like a Nintendo Switch. In fact, my desk now is literally just my Steam Deck and my Switch next to each other. It's safe to say that I love my Steam Deck, and the best way I could describe it is that it feels like a gamer's laptop. It has every app I need, and for those it doesn't, like my original editing software, there's plenty of alternatives. If you hate it, you can even install Windows. So, in contrast to my first impression of regret, I've now completely 180'd, and I'm incredibly glad I made the swap. Whether you watch this video for insight or just entertainment, thank you for making it to the end. After I paid an artist for my last video's thumbnail and it flopped, I've been kind of demotivated to make videos, so